Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the lab. And also, welcome to the first episode of Road to World 2024, where I will be documenting the journey, the grind of myself playing competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG, and eventually, or hopefully, make to the Yu-Gi-Oh! World Championship of 2024. That being said, let's start the episode. Move time back to the end of 2023, Konami had dropped us a pretty big Christmas gift, a ban list, a very sizable ban list, with addressing several top contender decks in the meta, Unchained, Rescue Ace, Purely, etc., and while at the same time releasing us some good old friends from years ago. This ban list obviously has shaped the meta quite a bit, and I guess I'll show everyone how I really prepared for the format. Like by just looking at the list, the first decks I really anticipated after the meta were Labyrinth, especially because rollback is also coming in a few weeks by the time they release the ban list, and also Vanadium. Those two were the initial big two in my mind. It's probably also like in a lot of other people's mind, due to the fact these two decks were just simply untouched by the ban list. And the last one that was also kind of scared post this ban list was any variants of Fire King decks. Fire King decks are getting even more support in the incoming booster set Phantom Nightmare, but even without the set, the deck is already solid, if not just good. So these are the decks I was like scared of, or I should be preparing for those. And at the same time, I don't like any of those decks. Lab is never really a fan of my deck. Vanadium, I kind of do want to try Vanadium, but I don't own any of the Vanadium cards. So down to the end, it was just Fire King. However, the pure Fire King, specifically like we're talking about the Elephant Beatdown Fire King deck, that's how I call it. It kind of feel a bit too slow, and usually I feel like the game right now doesn't have enough turns for that kind of Fire King deck to really snowball in long enough to win, to guarantee a safe win. The longer the game goes, the more things can go wrong during the process. So none of these top three in like at the very beginning in my mind were like a fan of my decks. And at the same time, some of my friends recommend me a different deck. So instead of going for the meta, we just go anti the meta. What about that? Like Shifter is still a broken card. Shifter do cover the top three that I just said. And what's the best deck utilizing Shifter? Not Flounder. It might be Kashtira. Kashtira surprisingly has a solid matchup against Fire King, because first of all, Shifter exists. Second of all, there are enough non-engine spaces supporting like Droll and a lot of other hand trap. That's also good against not only Fire King but also Vanadium. And then Kashtira Burst as a card is a very effective tool against things like Fire King Island. And then as well as all the removal Kashtira has, specifically talking about Fernier, is a non-destruction removal that doesn't trigger any Fire King in the graveyard. So we had I would say a very okay, very decent approach at the very beginning. There's also other cool things about Kashtira. If we want to, we can side a good amount, because like despite Kashtira has Arise Heart gone from like 2 lists ago, everything else were back to peak. Like Unicorn even come back to 3 from this ban list, despite this surprisingly is no longer the best starter of the deck. Unlike when Arise Heart was alive, Unicorn was known as a better starter than Fernier. Fernier now is actually doing more than Unicorn, simply because Unicorn, you usually have to grab a Theosis to start combo, but Theosis lock itself into Xyz only, where the Xyz monster after Arise Heart Gong are relatively lackluster. the Link monster are the ones that's like doing the more job in the format. Where Fernier by itself, we found out Fernier going second specifically can trade away so many cards. It's like almost an absurd level. Going second, summon Fernier, Fernier beat over something, use effect, remove something, then use the search effect, grab a Rice Heart, normal summon the Rice Heart, make a Dracosack. Dracosack now can summon 2 tokens, and Dracosack tribute a token to pop out 1 more card. And because we normal summon the Rice Heart instead of special summon with its own effect, we're not locked under Xyz. With this kind of play, Dracosack now, the Dracosack token can link into Link Spider, and Link Spider and Dracosack can go into an SP Little Knight. So just by Fernier as a single card going second, it can trade away up to 4 cards on the field just by itself. And this is like almost an absurd level of power going second, and quickly caught everyone's eyes in our testing group. And we kind of just like build and then change the whole deck based on that. Like our going first combo, if hypothetically was only a planet, is to search Fernier instead of searching Unicorn. Then just Fernier, Rice Heart, banish whatever missing. Dracosack get 2 tokens, then 2 tokens into IP. And we like with just Fernier, it's like an IP into SP in the opponent's turn, while at the same time have like 4 other cards in hand to back up whatever situation missing. Like, and Unicorn, despite Unicorn is like probably the worst 1-card starter, Unicorn still participate very well in any of the 2-card combos, like Unicorn Fernier, Unicorn Rice Heart, so on and so forth. So the deck has like a good amount of starters because none of these cards were hit, and then good amount of going second power because they are naturally good at going second, while at the same time there's like plenty of spaces for going second for non-engines. And also there are 3 pots available for the deck. So overall, this is like at the very beginning a very good foundation for most of us to start like learning the format and testing the water and see if something is good, something is not effective, and so on and so forth. And later on, there was even like another variant of this popping out. Shout out to Luke Tyler. I think he piloted like a similar version of Cash, except with the difference he was utilizing Heatsoul into the Kashtira deck. So the package goes, it requires similar thing to start. Fernier get Rice Heart into a Dracosack. Dracosack get 2 tokens, but then link away both tokens into double Link Spider, and double Link Spider into Crystal Heart. What will be that? Probably these 2 go. And I think this will be my list, or my ratio for the extra deck if I knew this package earlier. So the whole idea is 2 Link Spider into a Crystal Heart because Crystal Heart requires 2 Link Monster. And then Crystal Heart revive a Earth Link Monster, which is Link Spider. Then these 2 go into Heatsoul. Heatsoul then obviously able to draw you 2 cards. The idea is cool. I didn't really I didn't come up with this. Shout out to Luke for doing well at the regional, going undefeated like 2 regionals in a row, something like that. But overall, I still think, despite these are some cool things, I don't like the deck as much. By no means, this is a decent deck of the format. It's like a solid, in my opinion, 1 tier 1.5 almost. But it feels not safe whenever I play it. Like going second, yes, there's a lot of hand traps, but hand traps in general feels kind of weird in the January format. Since everyone's kind of developing in a different speed than I noticed, due to the fact a lot of people just give up this format because there were no big tournaments for them. Unlike me having not one, not two, but four regionals to go to grind for war points. So a lot of people are taking a lot less serious to the format. Therefore, they are using cards that, quote unquote, may not be as accurate to the meta as they should, and that resulted the format. Everyone's developing in a complete different speed, and we just end up seeing like all different kind of non-engines in the format, ranging from all these hand traps I played to like Ball Breaker, like Raigeki, Lightning Storm evenly, to like some other specific ones like Thrust Talent Droplet, and so on and so forth. So it's like the variety is killing the cash deck, in my opinion, because cash deck the cash cards are very good against specific some of them, but very vulnerable to the other ones. Specifically talking about like Nib. And if I do care about Nib, then my cash play will just be sitting with Big Monster Pass. Suddenly the board is no longer looking as impressive as it could be. And if I commit too much and just go against like a random guy who has a random Nib in the deck, I will be cooked. So at the end, it's just like it never feels safe. Without a Rise Heart, there's never a thing that just be like, that's guaranteed the best choice to make. And in order to make the better choice without any information in like those regional rounds, it's kind of tough. Sometimes my opponent just drew the perfect answers to me during like testing. So I ended up dropping the deck. Like I still said, this is a very solid deck. This is definitely something that worth bringing to regionals, or even if there's YCS in this gap month, it's probably still worth using or trying with this. But overall, I give up. I think I need to learn more things and explore more things to have a better understanding, or even a better understanding to the current format, and a better preparation for the next format. So I switched to a different deck. Fire King variants. Like I said earlier, I don't like the Elephant Beatdown, the Arvada control version of Fire King, because it's too slow. So I went for a more aggressive ways to play Fire King. And I actually brought it to some tournaments. Well, I was planning to bring it to some tournaments. I had a plan so I live in Philadelphia. I had a plan traveling to New York City on like a Saturday of I think January 6th. And me and my friends at New York City, then we drive up from New York to I think Springfield, Massachusetts for the regional on that Sunday. However, there was a snowstorm coming. So instead of going for the regional plan, we just all agreed, yeah, it's probably safer to just stay home. Who knows, not doing anything, or just do whatever, like, or maybe more testing. But there's certainly no more regionals for me that weekend. Would I take that? Would I really be like feeling prepared but not getting any war points for a weekend? No. So I still end with going to some tournaments. Shout out to my local Phenomenal Gaming. They had a PS5 tournament on that same Saturday. So instead of traveling up to New York, I ended up just traveling to New Jersey for the PS5 tournament. During the PS5 tournament, it was a sizable amount. There was like about 40 people, so we played 6 rounds into a top 8. For out of the 6 rounds, I actually finished 5-0 at the very beginning. When 5-0, then the final round, both me and my opponent, which is my friend in the final round, we knew we were both guaranteed top, so I just gave the win. It didn't matter. We didn't even play. Then top 8, I faced a branded guy. this is where I realized, yeah, this Tri-Brigade version or Fire King in general kind of hard to deal with fusion decks, because all my interactions are like spot on spot removal usually. So, and the fusion deck's really just not scared of those things. So I lost in top 8, but overall that day I was very satisfied with the list, with some specific things I threw into the list that I'm gonna talk about in a minute. So I guess we're focusing on the list here. It is a Fire King Tri-Brigade deck, but more it's a Tri-Brigade deck and not a Fire King deck. That's the part I like it. I prefer the Fire Kings to be a sub-engine that turn on whatever the main engine is, instead of play it as a main engine. And because of that, there's like a plenty of Tri-Brigade monsters, 9 of them, which could be even higher. I was just testing different things, so I had to cut spaces for something else instead of the third fractal. And if you look close enough, there's no tanky in the list. Droll is just that scary. I assumed everyone gonna be at least respecting Manadian, so everyone's gonna at least have main deck, if not side deck Drolls. And tanky into a Droll feels kinda horrible. And also there's enough like search cards in the deck that I just don't want to open like a handful of searches and get like blow up by a single Droll. So I didn't end up playing any copies of tankies, just the amount of like a higher amount of Tri-Brigade monsters. And the Fire Kings are nearly the minimum. I don't even play Arvada. That's really a normal summon every time I see it, and then that kind of conflict with the Tri-Brigades. Then with one Grunix is okay, for the fact this is not a Fire King deck. So even hypothetically in interaction I lost this Grunix, it'll be fine because my Tri-Brigade monster is still able to push for game without the help of Grunix. Grunix, on the other hand, is honestly just a tool to turn on my Tri-Brigades in the hands where I don't see them. So one copy Grunix is fine. Rest of these kind of like standard ratios: 3 carrying, Baron, 2 Ponix, and then the Fire King spell is just like Swan Sanctuary, 2 Island. These are all kind of standard. Circle, in my opinion, is the better Fire King spell in Fire King decks. Well, in this specific Fire King deck, Skyburn is usually the choice for like a pure Fire King variant or a heavier Fire King variant, due to the fact there will be more Fire King monsters on the board. However, in this version, in this specific list, there isn't that many Fire King monsters, or even there is, the Fire King monsters usually don't stay on the board at the end of the combo. Therefore, Skyburn is either dead when I search it, or just completely a brick if I draw it at the wrong time. However, Circle is different. Circle, instead of saying target a Fire King monster on my field, it says target a fire monster instead. So I can easily use this to dodge some interruption through on my Tri-Brigade monster as well. Giving an example, starting with Fractal. Fractal send Kit, kicks to Nerval. Nerval grab another either Fractal or Kit. Usually use Fractal here as example. Normal the Fractal, banish the first Fractal and Nerval, leaving the Kit in the graveyard. And hypothetically, my opponent imperm here, I just change Circle, pop the Fractal, revive the Kit from the graveyard. Suddenly, my first Tri-Brigade is resolving, and also I get a second Tri-Brigade that has not been activated to the board against like an imperm. This is just how good like Circle as a card is. And that's pretty much the Fire King and the Tri-Brigade lines. Yeah. And in talking about the other quote-unquote like less engine pieces, the Wanted engine. Like, come on, these are Wanted and Diabel are probably one of the best cards in this entire TCG card pool right now. So, obviously, the big reason why I want to play Fire King Bears is just to enjoy the power of Wanted and Diabel. So, having like that's also why these cards are sitting at the absurd prices here right now. Wanted, original, and Diabell. These are standard, but there is a non-standard thing in this package that I don't see a lot of other people playing, which is the inclusion of this trap. Sinful Spoils of a Betrayal Severia. It says, send a Diabell monster from my hand or field to graveyard and target a face-up card on the field permanently negated. While it's in the graveyard, when my opponent activate cards or effect in response to my Diabell monster or Sinful Spoil spell trap, I can banish this card from the graveyard, negate their response to mine. And I get to use either effect per turn. So, this, in a lot of eyes, is a brick, right? It's almost a brick, or it's just completely a brick. However, with the Tri-Brigade cards existing in the deck, whenever my Tri-Brigade Link monster searches, getting revolt or just draw with Fair Jet, I need to put a card back. Therefore, having these quote-unquote bricks in the deck, I'm okay because they will just be going back to the deck at the end of the combo, which at this point, as long as this is a card in my hand, it's fine. But on the other hand, whenever I don't see this in my hand, whenever these are stay in the deck, I have more options with my Wanted and Diabell. So this became my primary interruption to go for if I'm anticipating a draw. Like if I open Wanted and other cards that can play, I'll just play with the rest of my hand. And for example, draw happens, I'll just search a Diabell and then Diabell pitch something else, summon, set the trap. Because Severia is a trap, it will most likely be activated in my opponent's turn, sending the Diabell as cost. That will trigger Diabell's last effect, the hidden effect, where if it's sent to graveyard from hand or field during opponent's turn, it can revive itself by sending another card I control. And then obviously on summon, it will set another Sinful Spoil. So this interaction, or this just one additional card in this package that everyone's already playing, become like a good pivot into draw. I get drawed, I still get to Diabell, I get an interruption, next turn, send the Diabell, negate something, then Diabell comes back, resetting a different like either Wanted or original that I needed based on the game state. So suddenly I have broken follow-ups like that. And along with that, there's another engine, quote unquote. Remember the Kashtira list we just talked about? Yeah, I kind of included that into this Tri-Brigade deck by just playing 3 Furniers. We grabbed the best parts of Kashtira and threw it into another deck, which works. There are 3 Furnier and a Rise card. Even without a package, all these random cards, when random exceeds Link Monster in the extra deck, there's Furnier by itself is already a solid card to play in the format. And in Fire King variants, Rise Heart has already been played for the fact it's a fire monster that can be grabbed off Furnier. I remember, I think what's called Vanquish, so also use the same idea for their engine, and to just enable their combos. Like I can go Furnier, grab Rise Heart, and Island pop the Rise Heart, give Grunix summon, pop the Kit in my deck, Kiss and Nerval get a Tri-Brigade, normal summon, banish something, get like a Bear Broom. Suddenly my ending board is like Furnier, Appaloosa, Revolt, something like that, right? This also has become another way of me dealing with draw. For example, because Furnier is usually the first monster I summon, I have the option to just grab the Furnier search immediately. Here, I'll just search a Rise Heart. If my opponent draw me here, which they nearly always do, I go normal the Rise Heart, banish another copy of Furnier from my deck. Now Rise Heart is a 7. These 2 into Draco Sack, into 2 tokens, into Link Spy, into 2 tokens, into an IP pass with an SP next turn. The standard cash combo. So yeah, with these many layers of ways to play against Joe, I was feeling very confident against Joe. I even joked with my friends saying my deck got better whenever a draw happened from my opponent. And as you see here, this has been like a way of me dealing with other cards. Instead of finding direct answers like call by or cross out to those, I like my cards to be having multi purposes. Like Furnier by itself is obviously a good card, going first and going second, being both offensive and defensive. But at the same time, now just adding some interesting monster in the extra deck, it also becomes an answer to draw. Same logic with Diabell, just adding one card in my main deck. Suddenly, this package is no longer just a starter or extender, it's also an answer to draw. Or rather say answer to it, it's just a way to play into draw while still able to win. And so I was very satisfied with the list. Losing to Branded in top 8, which is okay. I mean, I do have some hand traps in the deck, but not a lot. There's only 10, 3 Astral, Imperm, and a Crow. Crow being a searchable target of Shurag, that's why it's here. And then Droll doesn't do as much as against Branded, and then relying on just the Ash and Imperm, sometimes not feeling enough. And overall, like I said, it was a bad matchup. So losing a top 8, despite losing a top 8, I was pretty satisfied with my performance of the deck. And I think everything else are pretty standard. I could just go over with it really quick. Like the extra the Typhoon for Manadian, all these Tri-Beast type Link monster targets for the Tri-Brigade. Mirage for not only the Tri-Brigade's normal summon to turn them into to trigger their graveyard fat. I can also normal summon Droll and turn Droll into like a fire monster for Island to pop and trigger Grunix. That's a different way to do it. And then IP specifically with Link Spider and Draco Sack are for the Furnier package. And then SP obviously, Appaloosa, Axis, and obviously. So this is like a good way, good approach, like my preferred way to play the Fire King cards. Because there's also an additional thing. The Fire King has quote-unquote in-engine time strategy. With decks, with how TCG rule is, I think that's really an advantage. By playing the Fire King Baby Kirin, the old Kirin, it says if this card is destroyed and sent to graveyard, I get to send a fire monster from my deck to graveyard. Usually this is not needed in any normal situations, because if I need Grunix, I just search Grunix or destroy Grunix. If I need a kit off the Grunix, I can just Grunix pop the kit instead of Grunix pop Kirin, then pop the kit, right? So Kirin normally doesn't really do much. However, fire monster including the infamous Scattershot, which these two cards together in my side, the 2-card package, become a way for me to burn in time, and it's sort of a solid time strategy. In theory, in a very low chance, I can even burn turn 0 with raw drawing Kirin, Fire Monster, and Grunix, or just Big Kirin and Baby Kirin. Things like those. So yeah, these two cards are definitely like this small package for time definitely also caught my eyes, which I tried it, but it didn't came up because Tri-Brigade cards usually finish the game really quick or just don't even do anything. So I scoop quick. So I barely ever enter a time and get to use these. But I still think these are inclusions worth the spot in the side. And the rest of these are just fairly common, like Bell for Lab, Crow for Lab and Fire King, Cosmic for Fire King, Evenly for Fire King and just going second in general, and D-Barrier for Manadium and any other trouble deck I could be facing while I'm going first, specifically like Purely, Tier, and well, I guess Branded that I faced in the tournament. So yeah, this is a solid deck. I did also not only did a PS5 tournament on that Sunday, there was a remote regional. So I also entered that with the same exact list. However, that one was didn't go as well. I had let me see. I had some bad experience during the regional. I guess one of the reason it was a regional not hosted by side deck. So in my opinion, things wasn't like things from the tournament side wasn't going as smooth as it should. The rounds, the waiting time were taking a little bit longer than usual. A little bit too long for everyone to be comfortably waiting even. And then I had a judge ruling where, long story short, I had internet issues. And at the end, I received a game loss, which in similar situation from other remote regionals, I was not, I wasn't, and I believe I shouldn't be penalized because it's not like, it's not completely my fault. But at the end, I received a game loss in this specific regional, and I knew similar thing would probably happen. So by the time I got a penalty, it was during the early rounds. I just straight dropped. It was not worth my time to really finishing the tournament, knowing I probably will be penalized for another game loss that I have no control with. So I just dropped it and decided to enjoy the rest of my Sunday. And but for the very few rounds I played the deck still functioned and performed very well to it. So at the end, yeah, that's I'm satisfied with the deck. However, we'll see. I still made changes after this week, and the week after, on January 14th, I entered another remote regional. This time, I wasn't performing as good in Swiss, I think. Yeah, I after 8 rounds with like I think 150 some people, I ended with X1-2, 5-1-2, one loss, two draws. It was unfortunate some of like the draws were the best I could do. My loss was against a tier. Like I said, fusion decks are usually giving me trouble with this kind of deck. And my tier opponent just like the standard tier opponent milled everything. He hit, so I couldn't do anything about it. My two draws were the first one was a sprite. I think because game one he made a board, but I broke it. Obviously, going second, breaking it take a lot of time. Game two, he made a similar board, but this time because it was after side, he had additional judgment in addition to whatever the board he made. So I tried to break the similar way, but got stopped by the judgment at the very end. Took some time and also didn't win the game two. And game three, time was getting very close, so my strategy is just like set up the board and maybe burn for time. But my opponent shifted me, so we could only just sit there and kind of play defensively, and then end with just resulting in a draw that I stopped my opponent do any damage. So yeah, that was the first draw. I would say that's probably the best I could do. Like scooping game two when I knew it was breakable, but not until the judgment. I think was okay, and then game three I just had no control to it. And then the final round, I think I was X1 moving to round 8. I play against I play against a Pendulum Magician with the Tsar cards from Age of Overload. That one, yeah, it's also a very scary matchup. I lost dice roll. I did open some hand trap, but my opponent triple attack after my first one, so instead of even exposing what I'm playing, I just immediately scoop. But game two, my hand wasn't as strong, and my opponent hand trapped me as well. So I had to organize my board a little bit awkwardly and give my opponent some chance to come back. Therefore, it also took a long time for game two. And then game three, what happened? Oh, game 3, I did open going second cards, but those cards are evenly. Or either even, no, it was thrust into possible evenlies in my deck. So I had to watch my Pendulum Magician play the entire combo, the whole movie, to get to my turn. And during my turn, I don't even have a battle phase to do any damage, because I had to play first, bait out negate, then clear my board, then thrust for evenly him, then main phase to set up my own board while dodging his last interruption. That just took a lot of time, and end with, I think, I couldn't do any damage and had to pass turn. My opponent tried to cowboy me in time, but I revolt to stop that. So that was the regional. X1-2 wasn't as satisfied, but I think it was still okay. I made some changes, like both before and after that regional, and this is pretty much the final version of the deck. Like I mentioned, I did including Thrust, Talon, and then main deck evenly. Thrust particularly has some unique traits in Tri-Brigades. Unlike a lot of other decks where playing Thrust is kind of awkward against Droll, because whenever Droll happen, as one of the most common hand trap right now or ever, Thrust cannot search anything, so you have to set something in front of the deck, which normal decks don't really have a strong trap, which at that point Thrust just setting an imperm, that doesn't feel enough. However, in Tri-Brigade variant decks, Thrust can set Revolt. Revolt is a normal trap accessible through this way, and this suddenly makes Thrust a very reliable way against Droll. Since going second, I can even search other cards like Imperm or Evenly. Specifically against Fire King, which I think I played 1 or 2 during that second remote regional. The Fire King cards like Baron, Ponix, they are mandatory to activate in the standby phase of turn 2, which is my turn, which will guarantee turn on Thrust. And that means I just thrust, grab evenly, go battle phase, clear everything on the board, and play into the one last thing they could have. And usually that wins the Fire King matchup pretty easily. And I definitely felt correct to including these cards. I think during the second regional, despite I wasn't performing as well, I won every single like quote unquote meta matchup that I anticipated, such as the Fire Kings, the Vanadium, and even the Lab, since I have so many hand traps. And as you can see in this list, I dropped the Furniers. Furnier has been, in theory, it's working very well, but in practical, it wasn't doing enough going second. Like, if it goes through, yes, it goes through, but usually it doesn't go through. It just trade away something, so it doesn't really do much. Also, forcing to normal summon the Rise Heart in a Tri-Brigade deck kind of feel awkward, because they do conflict with the normal summon. So at the end, I was like, yeah. Also, the Rise Heart started peeling in my head more often than it should. So I just stopped, I just dropped the whole package. For another reason, now opens up a good amount of spots in my extra deck. As you see, there are several new inclusions in over there. The first thing, well, I guess there's another thing. There were also surprisingly not as many Vanadium existing in all the tournaments I played. I think the one Vanadium that played in the second regional were the only Vanadium I saw in all 3 tournaments. So I made a decision moving Droll from main deck to side, and also cut the Typhon from my extra deck. Typhon honestly isn't doing enough outside the Vanadium matchup, and there are definitely games where even I made Typhon, it wasn't making any difference as I just straight passed. And Droll, on the other hand, I found out there is some awkwardness with Droll and Tri-Brigade, especially Revolt. So standard board, Appaloosa Revolt with, let's say, a draw left in hand, right? Because I have draw, I will want to activate Revolt first to link to go into Shurag while link away my Nerval as a follow up. So I will prefer to Revolt first, get the Nerval search in, so I can safely draw later instead of giving up my search, giving up my follow up. However, that kind of play will punish me very, very hard if my opponent has a talent. Shurag will just trigger, will just make the talent alive, and my opponent can just immediately talent take my Appaloosa. Now suddenly this draw is also dead, and my biggest interruption Appaloosa is also taken. Suddenly I'm just down to nothing. And that happened to me once, and I quickly realized that cannot be happening. But if I decide to hold the Revolt and like Appaloosa first or draw first, I'm able to survive at least. But then my Revolt will not be able to get any follow-ups, since Nerval cannot search if draw is already alive on the field, or draw has been applied. And that ultimately just causing awkwardness here and there. And I did try to solve it by adding a Zelantis for the specific part. Zelantis, like hypothetically, if I do have drawing hand in the Appaloosa Revolt board, I'll just hold the Revolt as much as I can. Appaloosa first or draw first. At the tactics, sure. I mean, I can chain block with Shurag, so even taking Appaloosa won't stop the Shurag banish. And then Shurag will most likely survive. Next turn, I just link away the Shurag into a Zelantis, trigger the Shurag Gravy Fed. That way, I get my searches in for follow-up. So that's a way of, that's something I changed specifically. And draw turned out, unless against Vanadium, it's not particularly that good in the meta. So I just decided to move it into the side, which instead of those spaces for non-engine, I replaced with like Valor and Crow. Crow and Valor just more generic. Valor specifically because there's also like a rise of rescue Ace in tournaments. So having more negates against that is definitely not a bad thing to have. And the Crow just like, because there's also still a decent amount of Fire King and Labyrinth, so Crow is fine. At the end, the whole deck are relatively similar. I also cut a Kirin, since if I do have Fire King access, I will naturally get to Kirin. If I don't have any Fire King, usually because this Kirin is the Fire King cards in my hand, that doesn't do anything besides dodging like an Imperm on Kit. But it was, but I think naturally I have ways to play into Imperm already, so this is not as important as it sounds like to be. And Tri-Brigade cards usually operate like pretty fast and go like the first and second wave are usually enough to win. So I barely ever needed grind into a long game where I would need a third Kirin in the deck. So I just lowered even more for the Fire King portion of the deck. It was just still good. And then, like I said, I pump up the Tri-Brigades. This is ultimately a Tri-Brigade deck, so having more Tri-Brigade starters, definitely not a bad thing. And, yeah, that's pretty much it, the main deck. There are definitely changes, but I think these are the good changes that I feel pretty good making those. Then, extra deck, the inclusion of the big Grunics. There were hands where I opened a handful of Fire King. In this situation, I found out if my opponent like Imperm on the Grunics, I usually don't have a way to send the Grunics to graveyard anymore. And that make it kind of awkward. So, like for example, I open like what? For Island Grunics, nothing else. And then, no, like Island Baron, something like that. I think there was one hand I had those. Like I could get to Grunics, I could get a Kirin next turn, but I have no way to send the Grunics to graveyard. No, it was Sanctuary. So with the inclusion of the big big Runix at least have the option to just overrate it next turn, and then that way it kind of send the Runix to graveyard and let it come back next turn for Kit. And then the rest of these are pretty standard. Oh, the animal is a new thing. I found out without a level or link 1 monster to make off on top of Ponix, there are definitely games where when breaking board is going second, my hand will be like, okay, island pop a fire, summon. No, it will be like Ponix, grab Sanctuary Island, pop the Ponix, get Grunix pop the Kieran get Ponix back, pop a card on field. Here I have Ponix and Grunix on the field, and I trade away 1 card from my opponent. But because I don't have a link 1 to link Ponix away, I cannot go into an SP with the first effect being alive. So I need something, either Link Rebo, Anima, to turn this Ponix into a Link monster, then link that with the Grunix into SP, banish additional card on the field. Link Rebo isn't as needed as in this, unlike in, for example, Rescue Ace wanted to have Link Rebo coming back multiple times to block attacks, or just use that as like a Cyverse body block for materials for Heatsoul. In this deck, there isn't really no need for those. And Anima, surprisingly, is very valuable in the format. Like, very rare occasional, I'm not expecting that happen, but some like less skillful opponent will put their key monsters into zone 2 and 4. That could happen, but that shouldn't happen. However, there are things that guarantee happen make the Anima alive, because there are, out of the different possible ending board from Fire King variant decks, Appaloosa and the Heatsoul were pretty popular ending board monsters, which will guarantee open up a zone for Anima to if not take in the monster, at least force out an effect. So yeah, the inclusion of Anima is definitely a good addition to the list. And since now I cut the whole Furnier package and free up the extra deck. And then Heatsoul is another inclusion. Found out the only way to kill people to OTK is go through the Tri-Brigades into Axis, but sometimes those can be stopped easily. So having a backup line, or use this as a primary line to force out things, then use Tri-Brigade as a backup line, either way, is never a bad thing to have. There are still plenty of spellcasters being like Diabel, Veiler, or after sighting there's even Droll. It's definitely, it came up, and it definitely have won me game a lot easier than I could otherwise. And Zelantas, as I mentioned earlier already, this is for the package for like specifically turn Shurag into Zelantas and trigger Shurag's graveyard fat turn on like more either Tri-Brigades or Fire Kings. And side deck are relatively the same as well. Bell for Lab, Droll for Vanadium, Callby for Lab, Duster as another target that can be fetched of Thrust was also a tool against Rescue Ace. And then because there's also Thrust, my friend pointed out how to deal with shifter decks. So I included a Karma Cannon to deal with Kashtira specifically. If I do face Flu, I'll just, instead of siding the Karma Cannon, I'll just keep my imperms and set the imperm of the Thrust. So at the end, yeah, this is like a pretty well rounded list. I originally was testing 3 copy of Thrust in the deck, and probably did that in the remote regional on the second one. However, Thrust sometimes can just be dead, especially going first. And yes, there are Link monster from Tri-Brigades that can shuffle cards back, but there's only a certain number of those can be done by that. And having too many deck cards, including copies of Thrust and Talons, maybe evenly or other things, sometimes it could be too many of them for me to shuffle back. So at the end, I cut a Thrust for probably another hand trap and just keep a ratio like this. Still feel pretty good about it. And overall, yeah, this is the list. I ended with using for the second regional. Did relatively okay, and I think I'm done with Fire King Tri-Brigade. Like, after playing for 2 weeks, I can tell this deck definitely has its limit. But within this limit, it was performing very well against specifically Fire King variant decks. Since there are still enough hand traps, Tri-Brigade, the removal from Tri-Brigades are very worthy against like Fire King Island or even just Grunix and Kirin that not many other Fire King decks really had. However, I did drop the deck after this week. I feel like it's time to learn another different deck to get, I mean, there's only regionals, so let me try different things and see how everything really works. So that being said, spoiler alert, in the next episode, we'll no longer be working on this deck. We'll be working on a new, completely different deck. And if you like videos like this, feel free to let me know in the comment section, subscribe to the channel. And like I said in the other video, these kind of long episodes will take longer to make and probably be posted relatively late. So if you are interested in just the short, condensed version of like standard deck profile videos, check out Team JNC Collectibles channel. This is my sponsor team. My deck profiles that I top in regionals should be posted on this channel probably within few days after the tournament has been concluded. And that being said, I hope you like this, and I'll see everyone in the next episode. Goodbye.